Every day, something is shaping you. Not dramatically, not loudly, but consistently. The question is not whether you are being influenced. The question is, by what? You wake up and reach for your phone. You scroll before you speak. You consume before you create. It feels harmless. Just information. Just entertainment. Just staying updated. But inputs accumulate, and accumulation becomes identity. Most people believe their outcomes are driven by effort. Work harder. Plan better. Try again. Yet few examine what precedes effort. Attention, because attention determines exposure, and exposure determines belief. Beliefs guide decisions. Decisions shape direction. If you do not control your inputs, your direction is being subtly assigned. There is a hidden asymmetry here. You think you're choosing what to consume, but algorithms are choosing what you see. Content is filtered, ranked, amplified. Not necessarily for truth, not necessarily for growth, for engagement. And engagement rewards intensity. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. Fear travels quicker than reflection. Comparison captures attention more easily than gratitude. When these inputs dominate, your internal landscape shifts. Gradually, you feel urgency without clarity, dissatisfaction without context, ambition without direction. This is not coincidence. Inputs alter perception. Perception alters standards. Standards alter behavior. The cycle continues silently. Consider your mental diet. How much of it is reactive? Breaking news, trending opinions, curated highlights of other people's lives. These fragments feel informative, but they rarely provide depth, and depth is where discernment forms. Without discernment, you borrow priorities. You begin chasing what is visible instead of what is meaningful. There is also the emotional dimension. Inputs do not merely inform, they prime. Repeated exposure to anxiety-inducing content elevates baseline stress. Repeated exposure to comparison elevates baseline dissatisfaction. Repeated exposure to distraction lowers tolerance for stillness. Over time, your nervous system adapts to noise. Silence feels uncomfortable. Focus feels effortful. Reflection feels slow. So you return to stimulation. The cycle tightens. Control over life diminishes. Not because you lack intelligence, but because your internal environment has been outsourced. High performers understand this. They do not merely manage time, they manage exposure. Limited social feeds, curated information sources, intentional reading, not as a moral stance, as strategic protection, because what enters repeatedly shapes what emerges consistently. There is another overlooked layer. Inputs define imagination. If you're only exposed to reactive content, your thinking becomes reactive. If you're only exposed to short-form fragments, your attention span contracts. If you're constantly consuming others' ideas, your own voice weakens. Creation requires space. Space requires silence. Silence requires boundaries. Boundaries require intention. Without intention, inputs default to abundance, and abundance without filtering becomes overload. Ask yourself something uncomfortable. Who currently decides what occupies your mind? Is it you? Or the platforms designed to maximize engagement? What percentage of your daily exposure aligns with your long-term direction? And what percentage merely captures attention? Observe without defensiveness. Notice the subtle shifts in mood after certain content. Notice how comparison alters ambition. Notice how outrage alters tone. Notice how distraction delays execution. Then experiment. Reduce noise slightly. Replace passive scrolling with deliberate reading. Replace constant updates with defined check-ins. Not to withdraw from the world, but to reclaim authorship. Because control does not begin with massive decisions. It begins with small filters. Each input either strengthens clarity or diffuses it. Each exposure either reinforces your direction or redirects it. You cannot control every outcome, but you can influence what informs your thinking. And thinking precedes trajectory. The cost of unmanaged inputs is subtle. A scattered mind, a reactive schedule, a borrowed identity. The benefit of controlled inputs is equally subtle. Clearer thought, stronger standards, intentional movement. Over time, subtle becomes decisive. So reflect on your daily exposure. What are you repeatedly allowing into your awareness? What narratives are shaping your expectations? What voices are defining your standards? Then decide deliberately. Because if you do not control your inputs, you will gradually lose control of your direction. And direction, once drifted, is harder to reclaim than attention. Consider what would change if you became the editor of your mental environment. Then share what you notice when you begin filtering intentionally, instead of consuming automatically.